Good morning and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the NBA Betting Strategy Show. With us, as always, is Mike Lockey. You know him from livepokercoaching.com. Also, Matt Mosman. You know him from DraftKings Show The Slate. You know him from his own podcast, Studying the Sharps. I am Mike G, and I'm very proud that I got Lockey's website correct this time for the first time out of 10 tries. We've got some fun stuff to talk about. Perhaps a Sam Hauser is greater than LeBron James, maybe. We have some fun Atlanta Hawks news. We got some fun OKC maybe being good, at least whenever we're betting against them. Let's jump in and recap yesterday. We've got a pretty small slate today, but a couple interesting things from yesterday. So, Matt, let's talk about that Atlanta OKC game first. What were we thinking? What happened? What went wrong?
I'm already feeling like we have more sarcasm today than we've had. It's just I don't know. I think we're all in a bit of a state after yesterday and Saturday combined, and it's
I'm not bitter. You're bitter.
Yeah, right. The Hawks were dominating the game for the second and third quarters, and then I was watching it and I couldn't even figure out what happened. Like they just kind of forgot how to play. So the Hawks were up by a little at the end of the first. At halftime, they were up by, I think it was 5. They went up to a 9-point lead like the first couple possessions of the third, ended up getting the lead to 13, maybe even 15, like late third quarter.
Still a 4-point lead going into the fourth also.
It was down to 4 already. So the Thunder had their big push right at the end of the third then. Trae Young didn't play his best game overall, but Murray was playing well. Bogdanovich was shooting really well. And then all these weird Thunder players started making all their threes. Isaiah Joe. Giddey at one point hit like a 29-footer.
Don't become I will not stand for the Isaiah Joe blasphemy.
Who is this Ousmane Dieng?
Guy who made a lot of shots last night. Yeah, and Isaiah Joe, I'm sorry to group him in with low-level players like Josh Giddey, and yeah, apologies
Thank
to
you.
But yeah, again, the Hawks, it's so weird because we've had, like, the Hawks just won against a mostly full-strength Denver without Trae Young, and then they lose at home to one of the worst teams in the NBA, and sometimes the results are not really explainable, like what happened to the Warriors last night. The Warriors scored 104 points at home against a Pacers team that was on a back-to-back coming in from Portland without their only good defensive player in Miles Turner. The Warriors scored 104 points when their team total was, I think, 127, something like that.
Like I have an interesting, quick thing to add here.
Okay.
As the league becomes more and more threes and dunks, etc., there's also a lot more variance that happens, right? So the amount of 3-point attempts per game has gone up so much that, like, it's actually, like, as a guy that's professional gambled for a long time, missing a whole bunch of 40s, 60s is not that difficult. And you can go on incredibly streaky runs in the sport now. And that it's what makes it hard. It's just like they got to put the ball in the basket, and so if they're missing a bunch of threes, like, any team can lose on any given night. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that definitely is part of it. Like, basketball, I think, has gotten higher variance over the last few years, but like the turnovers and stuff, I don't know. I mean, these seasons are long, and you just once in a while will get a game that makes no sense. Even like in this game, the 3-point shooting between the Hawks and the Thunder was pretty even. The Hawks couldn't stop fouling, and they couldn't stop turning the ball over. I mean, for Clint Capella to have 4 turnovers, and from watching it too, it felt like a lot of live ball turnovers where we were getting transition and then fouls. So the Hawks just didn't play well. I think there was some bad variance on their end in terms of the shooting. Like, they're a good 3-point shooting team, at least, if the right guys are taking them. Trae Young going 1 for 7 is weird. We did say, though, yesterday morning, on that note, this could be a little more of a high variance spot because Trae Young has some weird stuff going on. But I put the game on because it ended up being the second biggest bet of the day for me, with the Miami one being bigger, and we lost that one too. We didn't talk about that on air because all the Memphis stuff was totally out of nowhere and happened after we did our show.
I was so happy to be on top of that one.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's a great bet. We can go back to that in a second, but I wanted to watch the Hawks game not just because it was a big bet, but also I was curious how the Trae Young stuff was going to look.
I can
And
only watch a game if there's something that I'm wanting to learn, right? At this
sure.
point in my career, if there's something I'm interested in learning about, I can turn a game on. But if there's nothing I'm trying to learn, like I can't watch any of the things we bet on. It's kind of weird.
I mean, I don't quite have that, but I get what you're saying. I do hear that. But
I watched the game last night trying to learn something.
Okay.
I watched the Sixers game trying to learn if Doc Rivers would ever be able to make a reasonable coaching decision or draw up any kind of an offensive play. And I learned that he is incapable of it. I actually turned off my hometown team's game in overtime because I knew they had no chance to win. And this was like in the first minute of overtime. I had had enough. But anyway, we digress.
That was embarrassing too. A lot of weird results in the NBA yesterday. But with Atlanta, it didn't seem like the Trae Young thing was a problem. There was nothing noticeable in the game where it looked like there was an issue where, every time they cut to him on the bench, he was cheering on his teammates. He was making all the passes. I think, if anything, he might have been overpassing. Like, he did not take a lot of shots in the game. I think, I'm going to just check again.
He was
6 for 19 shooting,
point.
1 for 7 for 3.
He did get to the foul line a decent amount. I guess it was a relatively normal Trae Young game, except that he missed a bunch of open threes. So that sort of aligns with what I was thinking too, where like he just it didn't seem to matter what was going on off the court, and yet they still
I agree. I'm
just
not
didn't play
putting
well.
a lot of weight into the Nate McMillan issue that has arisen. I think it's a long, ongoing thing that needs to be monitored, and like we now have to worry about random Atlanta trades not involving trades, other things where like they're going to still try to cater to this guy because they paid him a lot of money from what I remember. So trade's not going anywhere, but it's always fun to speculate on the drama. I just eat it up. So
yeah. The bigger problem for the game was that AJ Griffin played 30 minutes and shot 9 threes, and he's just not good. I mean, he's a rookie with a lot of athleticism, and there's potential for him, and he's had some huge moments already this year. He had an overtime game that he basically won by himself against the Raptors a couple weeks ago. But Bogdanovich is a way better player. Culver can actually defend, and they're missing John Collins and DeAndre Hunter. But we already had that priced in. But I think Griffin probably played well above his projected minutes, and Bogdanovich played below his for some reason, even though he shot 5 for 10 from 3. So the rotation got a little weird.
Isn't Bogdanovich on a minutes limit coming back right now?
Yeah, but I think that was lower than, even with the minutes limit, we probably would have guessed.
Fair enough.
I mean, part of me wants to be like, we got to just increase the manual adjustment on OKC because they keep burning us, but we don't really have a reason for that other than the results. Like, the market has aligned with the Thunder pretty closely in most of the games. Atlanta is undervalued, I think, a decent amount of the time, either because Trae Young's out and they over-account for it, or he's in and they over-account for his drama. Like, there's always something with the Hawks, at least it seems that way. So, like, I don't know that there's anything we need to really do here. The line did end up closing at 6.5. We had -6. Like, there's no reason for me to say, oh, they actually should have been favored by less than 6. Like, if we added in another manual adjustment, could we have had a projection in the 8s instead of the 9s? Like, okay, maybe. But, like, the Warriors game just highlights it, and just the variance in betting. And sometimes the result is just nowhere close to what you think it's going to be.
All right, so we're gonna write that one off to weirdness for Atlanta OKC from last night.
Yep.
What game do you want to discuss next?
Well, Miami Memphis we're gonna have to write off for the same reason.
Okay.
Okay, so to recap where we were at yesterday with that game, we were saying we had potentially a small amount of value on Miami at +1.5 if Jimmy Butler played. We were saying you could have some value on Memphis if he didn't, but Miami ended up being the side, so I'll just focus on that. We were looking at like 2 or 2.5 points of value on the Heat if Butler was in. Probably a small bet. And then in the middle of the day, we found out that John Morant, Jaren Jackson, John Conchar, who I guess doesn't matter a ton usually, but with those first two names already not being there, he also is part of that. We found out all of those guys weren't going to play. Or there was a combination of downgrades to doubtful and out, which downgrade to doubtful is out. It's basically
Yeah,
the same.
I was pretty confident Morant was going to sit,
Yeah.
but and Jackson was ruled out early, so there was just a ton of news that came in all at once, relatively unexpectedly, and I was able to snag some Miami 1.5.
So I do want to say on Memphis, I'm lucky that I think we're all lucky I didn't suggest this before. I'm going to suggest it now, and hopefully it doesn't burn us, because having gotten more money down on Miami yesterday would have only resulted in more losing. But the Grizzlies PR Twitter account is well ahead of the Underdog tweet. They're one of, I don't know how many teams do this, but they have an official Twitter account devoted to tweeting the injury report.
Okay.
And they'll just tweet it all as one list, and then Underdog has to go one by one, and their algorithm retweets the thing, or parses the tweet and sends it out.
Tweet based on that, yeah.
So I had the Grizzlies information, I want to say 20 seconds before Underdog put it out, just from having my tweet deck with the Grizzlies feed on it. Like, I saw it pop up on my screen, and actually, like, I bet less than I otherwise would have, because I just saw Morant's name and just reacted to Morant, and I didn't even realize Jaren Jackson was there too. So for me, it ended up being a 2.5 unit loss, when if I had realized right away that Jaren Jackson was on that list, it might have been 5.
It might have been everything, yeah.
And if I had turned on push notifications, which is actually what I'm suggesting now, it actually, I think, might be worth having push notifications on if you're serious about NBA betting, for the specific accounts that are devoted to injury news for their team.
Sounds
so
good.
like this Grizzlies account won't really tweet ever unless there's a change to a player. The problem is you're going to be getting a notification about Santi Aldama and Zaire Williams like daily, but you will also get the ones that matter. So if you're serious about NBA betting, I think the Grizzlies PR account, for future shows, if I think of other ones, maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll just try to remember them and tweet out the list of the ones that I like. But that one in particular, you're going to get your injury news faster.
That's a massive edge. Every second counts. And, a lot of these books, in one way or another, are waiting for that news as well to react. And so it's just a matter of how many algorithms it takes them to get it to their hands. And, we're just trying to be ahead of that.
So in this case, I was actually able to bet Miami at 3 different sites and get 3 different Dylan Brooks props in before the line was taken down, because I had that much time. And I lost that too.
Actually, you're right. I didn't look for Dylan Brooks. That would have been a home run bet in EV-wise. But
his PRA went from 24.5 to 34.5, and he came in under.
Feels about right.
Yeah. He missed. He came in one. I think he came in at 23 PRA, even though the line movement was 10. He went up 33%.
Yeah, came in at 23.
Yeah. So I lost that one anyway. That wasn't a big bet.
He shot 2 for 11 and 7 for 20 from the field.
And they still won the game. Like that. That's my favorite situation, if you're able to get that in general, where you have one team because you've gotten an insane amount of value because a player is out, and then you have all the player props on the other team, and now you have 2 things that are both independently really, really good value, but they're negatively correlated. It makes it really hard to lose both of them.
Makes it real hard to lose them both. Real hard.
I've had plenty of times where both sides have won, even though they're negatively correlated, because the value is so high. This is a rare one, though.
You played that near perfectly. Your expected value on your bets was quite large, and I'm totally with you. To miss both those is pretty lame.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I did wrong there is I didn't bet enough. Like, the EV was so high, I should have probably bet 2 or 3 times what I bet, because I didn't realize Jaren Jackson was ruled out right away. So anyway, we had all the Grizzlies ruled out, but then we got Butler in. So the projected line that we had went from something like, we were saying that Miami should be plus 2.5 if Butler got ruled out, or -1 if he played. And our projected line ended up being -7.5, because we got all those Memphis guys, which we had no idea about, getting ruled out, and then Butler still played, and then they still lost. So the closing line for the game was Miami -5.5. So we were this is another one, like, part of the reason that even though we've had some of these games with like really crappy results where it's just like, how did that happen? We've had these games where we actually are pretty aligned with the market. We just had the news before the market. Like, by the time the dust settles, we are actually right there with what the market was. It's just that we had it earlier and we got a different line.
There's this thing in poker known as Sklansky bucks, where it's the basic theory is like if I have aces and I get all the money in against your kings, I'm going to win 4 times and you're going to win 1 out of 5, right? And even though you may win this one time, I got my money in really good and I theoretically profited all this money. Well, the closing line value is the sports version of it, right? We cashed in all kinds of closing line value last night.
Yeah.
We had very little ability to turn it into real dollars last night, and that's quite a shame. But that is what it is like playing the game with expected value primarily as the
right. So that and again, right. That's a great example, right? Like we can't. We've got all these Sklansky bucks. We're seeing they don't have any cash value, but we know if we keep getting it in good, that's the whole thing. And on this show, we're gonna talk about not just these great wins. We feel like we played yesterday really well. We feel like we had the model identified where the value was. Like Matt said, it did identify where the value was because that's where the market ended up. Didn't work out, but we do believe over the long run that if you get the money in good, if you get it in before the market moves, it's going to pay off in the long run. But you'll have some of these nights where all you have in the morning is a lot of sarcasm. So
that's today.
Let's move on to the next game of sarcasm. Or what's the next game that we want to?
Brook Lopez.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can just briefly touch on everything else that happened because those were really the 2 big ones. Ultimately, like to summarize yesterday, I feel like personally, maybe for all of us, that we got lucky that we didn't play it better. Like the thing with the Grizzlies PR account. Like if I had made that point yesterday, would have lost like 3 times as much money. And then if we had a better sense of the Clippers news beforehand, like the Clippers opened at -2.5 and closed at -6.5 and won by 2. We didn't even have that. I don't know if you guys were able to get it when Kawhi and George were ruled in, but the line had already been moving. Yeah, so like that would have been an amazing bet to get -2.5. And it was again another one where we were right in line with the market. Like the model had 6.5 as the projected line. The line closed at 6.5, but there were -2.5s available earlier in the day if you had been savvy enough to be ahead of the Kawhi and George news. And so I didn't even have that one. And the Clippers won by 2. That would have been a tough loss. I think
Kawhi hit a game winner.
Yeah. Yeah, the Hornets actually were winning by like, I don't know, double digits maybe.
They were winning by a lot.
They were up 9 or 10 points at like late in the third. So, yeah, I mean, that's just, the Hornets were used to this by now, just them being bad overall. But yeah, just to like briefly recap the other games, Bucks Magic, when Brook Lopez got ruled out, the total went up 1.5. It's possible that I either overstated I don't think I overstated the Brook impact. I think maybe the Grayson Allen impact was understated, but like this is just a 1-game sample. Like the total did go up when he got ruled out, and there just weren't a lot of points there. So for me, that was a small loss. And then we had Dallas won. We had 1 positive. Well, you guys, we're going to talk about Boston.
We snuck a little in on the Celtics, but the Dallas was a victory.
And Dallas was good. And then before we talk about the Celtics, I guess that'll be a good segue into like our other topics. The Miles Turner thing resulted in the total for the Indiana game going up by nearly 5 points. And that ended up being an overbet for me too. We didn't talk about that one on air because I think it just would have taken too much of like the perfect storm of scenarios for that game to be an overbet. Like Wiggins
Miles Turner is really important, and like he came in late, and we made adjustments based on that.
Yeah, and we also we got the perfect combination of Warriors stuff for the over too, because Wiggins is a really good defender. If anything, he probably helps the under when he plays. Jordan Poole is the exact opposite, and we got Poole starting over Wiggins because Wiggins got ruled out. And then with Turner out, sometimes you'll see Batadze or Isaiah Jackson or one of these other guys start at center. They actually started Jalen Smith at center. They went small. Like this game played small for like the vast majority of it. And Steph Curry had his worst shooting game maybe of his whole career. I just want to check this because we have talked a little bit about MVP.
17? What is going on?
Yeah, I don't really. Yeah, a lot is going to be made about the Trae Young loss and his return, but I mean, Clay shot 1 for 7 on 2-pointers, but actually shot 8 for 16 from 3, so we can't really blame him. But Steph just couldn't hit anything. I mean, when do you see a Steph Curry minus 17 in the box score? So, I don't know.
Yeah, nah. I will admit I made the mistake. I played a little Warriors minus 11.5. I had not followed the news and the sheet as closely as I intended to, and I probably overstated at the time Turner's absence and the value and the impact. So after we spoke about it, I had a little buyer's remorse there, but I also decided not to hedge it off. So
we had the
it is
projected
what it
line
is.
there in the 12s after all that happened, though, so it wasn't that like you were okay. It just
I
wasn't.
remember I had remembered the sheet being like 12.2, and then there was a piece of news that I missed. I think the Wiggins news
Yeah.
brought the fair line back down to 11, and then the Turner news sent it back up to 12. But like I said, I had thought we were sitting at 12.5, and then the Turner news was coming in. So
Right.
that was a
Wiggins
little
and
bit of a
Turner
mistake
wound
on
up
my end.
canceling out in their impact.
Yeah,
And if it had
which
been,
I would not have guessed going into the game.
I think
But
Wiggins
it
rates
happens.
better, and we can talk about this with our predictions for the Lakers for the rest of the season. I don't think Miles Turner is going to change that much for them. Like, he's
I think
good,
that's
but
fair.
he's not a good offensive player. Like, he's a little overrated.
So we're betting the Celtics Lakers exacta. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, just the last comment I want to make before we move to today into futures is I probably would have given absolutely anything for a Pacers game like last year. Like a game where Miles Turner doesn't play and the Pacers actually protect the rim. That happened 0 times. I probably went, I don't even know what the record would have been. I think all of my biggest losses last year were Pacers games. So they somehow, in the most unlikely spot they could have, made it work. So yeah, I don't really want to talk about them anymore. They're
Round
not-
ball, go in hoops sometimes.
Yep.
Gotcha. I do want to just point out, I know we glossed over it. We spent a lot of time talking today about the things that didn't go right for us. You mentioned it in passing, but the Phoenix game we were on, that was
Yes.
one that it was, the recommendation was if Chris Paul is out.
The line didn't move for Chris Paul. I thought that was odd.
Yeah, I guess he was priced closer to doubtful than we realized.
Like
But I do
I
want to
didn't even
victory
see
lap
the-
Josh Green specifically because that guy
Okay.
is rated above Christian Wood and in the 538 ratings, and we did talk about him, right? Like
Yes.
that came up
Yeah,
briefly.
There was a Josh Green call out yesterday that maybe he's the guy that makes the difference. So anyway, that was one that did play as expected in terms of. I mean, obviously we weren't seeing a 19-point win, but we saw value if Chris Paul was out on betting the Mavs at -2, -2.5, or -3 is what I believe we were at on
Yeah.
the show. So that one saved us a little bit, and then.
real quick
Right.
though on Josh Green, as far as I understand, wasn't he the darling of Haralabob when he was in Dallas?
Yeah, he was one. He was one of the ones that Harrell Bob was on. But you know, he pissed Luka
Sharpest
off.
basketball mind I know. I'll take my chances.
Yeah, no,
believing that.
absolutely. Actually, there'll be a Harrell Bob call out here if and when we're talking about the Celtics. So
Can't wait.
Let me know when you're ready, Matt.
Okay, let's do it now, and then we'll do this first, and then we'll talk about the games for today because they're going to be quick. Like we don't have much today, so
Gotcha.
let's
All
do
right.
future stuff today.
All right. So one thing for the Celtics, this was when after we closed the show yesterday. I was looking at it, and I kept fixating on the Celtics being underdogs. It
There
was
were pick'ems for a while on the road against Toronto.
Yeah, they were plus
and then it
1.5.
did become 1.5. Go ahead.
Yeah, they're plus 1.5 for the Celtics. We knew that we did get news that Horford was out and Blake Griffin was going to start. And you know, this is one. You know, we talked a little bit yesterday about how historically good that offense is. Where you know they're at 121 points per 100 possessions. NBA record's 117. There was one other factoid I had heard going into last night's game. There are 19 guys in the NBA this year who've shot 33s or more and are at 45% or better. Celtics have 5 of those 19 guys on their team. So there's
Is
a
that
bunch
sustainable
of
or is that running hot?
I mean, the guys that are hitting them, you know, look at the guys that are hitting them. Grant Williams, Peyton Pritchard, Hauser. I'm drawing a blank now on who the other two are that are at 45% or above. But it's not like guys that can't make threes. These guys are making threes, and with Tatum and Brown able to attack the basket so good, these threes are open threes. So I don't think that are they going to stay at 45%? Maybe not, but these are good shooters that are on the floor and spacing the floor, and then giving more room for Tatum and Brown to operate. So, anyways, we had those stats. Boston's also on a really strong pace on point differential. So I just kept staring at that and wondering, when's the next time that when Brown and Tatum are playing, when are they ever going to be underdogs again? So we had, anyway, we did a small bet, I guess a half unit bet. I'm wondering, Matt, I know you do manual adjustments. I know your heart's breaking because of how much money you had riding on the Celtics last year. I feel like we're in the run, and as a Philly fan, it is inbred in me to hate the Celtics. However, as a basketball fan, I know how good this team is. I think we're in the midst of a historic run. If this team stays healthy, and just a reminder, they still have the key to their defense, who hasn't played a minute this year. When Time Lord comes back, they'll probably even be better. Is there something we do on the manual adjustments that maybe gives them a bump? Is there something where, like I made a comment this morning off air, I'm at the point where normally we're looking for 1.5 or better of value based on our model to make a bet. I'm almost at the point where if it's anything positive, even if it's 0.1 positive for our model, I'm thinking it's worth something. So am I overboard here, guys, on my Boston love? And God, it hurts me to say those words, but this team is really good. Sorry, one other thing to throw out there in terms of numbers and stats. Kind of historically, it's the age 26 to age 28 season that are supposed to be the like you look back at the superstars. Jordan won his first championship at 28. Steph won his first at 26. That's kind of the time period when these players tend to come into their own. I think LeBron was 26 when he won his first one. Jaylen Brown's 26 now. Tatum's 24, but he's been, he started in the league as a 19-year-old. So, like, this seems like the time that they're ready. They got there last year. They fell short. They know what it's like to get there. So, I'm not saying to throw the model out, but Matt, what are your thoughts here? What's going through your head?
Yeah, we mentioned this briefly before we started. It's just the amount of criticism that the 538 ratings got last year for where they put Boston was just, I don't know if the volume of criticism, I'm not sure, but just the level of anger from the people who really cared about it was so high. And it was like 538 and the ESPN BPI, like I was listening to Steph Curry on JJ Redick's podcast like over Thanksgiving break, and he literally referenced that BPI had the Warriors at whatever percentage to win the finals. Like, he knew about it. This was a thing last year that all the models loved Boston, and most people were just like, what is this? And now we're talking about those same models having the Celtics as undervalued, even though, if I go back to this quickly, 538 has the Celtics as by far the best team in the NBA. If we sort by their rating, they're number one. If we sort by their full strength rating, which would include Robert Williams.
8 more wins than number 2 overall.
Yep. They have a 45% chance to make the NBA Finals according to the playoff projections.
By the way, you know what you can get that last night, you get that at plus 200.
Oh, I didn't.
Celtics to win the East.
I had to refresh it. Okay, it's 49 now.
Look, 538 has
and 34% to win the championship. It's a little bit cut off.
Even money to win the conference and plus 200 to win the title. I mean,
as the break-even lines. Yeah, I mean,
as the break-even lines.
Yeah. So again, when I'm talking about how good the Celtics are, it's not like it's any. I'm not creating anything here. 538's on it. As you said, 538 was on it last year when they were under 500. That's where they were taking a lot of grief.
Right.
When they were seeing the underlying value. When the Celtics, it was almost, there was more talk about the Celtics possibly breaking it up and trading Jaylen Brown last year, as there was more talk about that than there were about them making a run.
Yeah.
But All I'm saying is this year, even with this looking this strong, I still think it might even be not strong enough on the Celtics. That's how good I
So
think.
what I'm hearing you say, Mike, is that your mental model is adding a 1.5 adjustment to the Celtics, and you're fine acting on that. I mean, that's,
Yeah, I don't
that's
know if it's a point
subjective,
and a half,
right?
but I
I
know
think
it's
that's
something.
fine,
Yeah.
but I don't know that Matt's got a strong take on that.
I've spent the last year giving negative adjustments to Boston because I almost had to assume that 538 was overrating them because the projections
But
were
isn't that just
so
an
lofty.
assumption?
What is that?
Isn't that just an assumption though? Like,
Well, they were so. If you had gone directly, like if we had just used our model for last year's playoffs, there was a weird exception actually in the Miami series because of like Jimmy Butler's health. But let's say you started in January of last year, like, almost a year ago, we would have had a bet from our system without a manual adjustment on the Celtics in literally 100% of their games. Until the Miami series in the conference finals, and then it would have gotten weird, and then we would have had them in every game of the NBA finals.
and I bet you would have done quite well.
Well, I did actually bet many of those, but the finals were bad enough that it kind of ruined a lot of at least like the expectation. It was a lot of the upside, but I do want to get rid of the playoff part of this because in the playoffs, the Celtics can't really do much to make their team better than they're currently playing because they're so deep that to condense the rotation, it might be just a net neutral. But other teams, like when Steph Curry goes from playing 33 minutes to 41 minutes, all the other teams are going to get better. So that's a separate thing. For right now, though, which is what we're talking about for the regular season, do we need a manual adjustment to basically say the Celtics are greater than the sum of their parts because they mesh so well together? I'm still inclined to say no. I hear the argument because they're just playing that well, but I do feel like we're ignoring some of the results. Like we're kind of picking and choosing what we want to remember. Like the
I just
Celtics.
found a bet that I'm interested in.
Okay, I'll hear it in a sec, but just
Go
to
ahead.
the Celtics just lost a home game to Miami in a game where we had them projected to win by like 7 points, maybe 7.5. They lost I think we might have even had a bet on this one. They lost a game in Chicago. They've actually been beaten by the Bulls twice this season.
I'll summarize what you're saying. They're 16-9 against the spread this year.
Yeah, they're not 25-0 against the spread.
I hear you.
Understood.
Yeah.
But that's the second best record in the NBA.
Yeah, so I think they're playing quite well. They are the best team. Like, that is not an argument to me. The Celtics are the best team. But
Let me ask you
I don't think
something
they're
here, Matt.
better than we have them. Like, that
So-
that part of it, I'm not sure.
That's actually where I want to go with it. So, like, I think it's, on one hand, I think it's a reasonable take to say this team might be historically good and maybe we should make some adjustments. I think it's also fair to say, well, how much better can we make the best team that the model's been all over forever? I think that's a fair point. I also
Yeah.
think it's fair to start wondering at what point is it signal and at what point is it noise? And I'm actually expanding this with the Celtics more to include the Kings, the Thunder, the Blazers as the other guys that are overperforming. And similarly, I take a look at these teams that are underperforming, and I'm seeing a lot of ripped up tickets that we've had over the months. Timberwolves, Heat, Spurs, Clippers. These are the teams that are running the worst so far. So, if we're having manual adjustments, I think it needs to at least consider some portion of this part of it.
Well, I don't like the manual adjustments for results because the results can be really weird for a number of reasons. Like one of the recent OKC wins was because Rudy Gobert got ejected like early in the game. They already didn't have Karl Anthony Towns. We didn't talk about Saturday, but like if I had been home when that happened, I probably would have cashed out my bet or, hedged in some way. I actually wasn't home for it. But there's stuff like that will create these against the spread records in a small sample. So that's not really a variable for me when I do the manual adjustment. I'm not
It's
really.
never been a consideration for me at any point in my betting career until today. So this is
Okay.
all just thinking out loud.
But
don't wanna be-
And remember,
I want to explain why I'm
the
doing
guy
that.
who, if anything, is more model based than
Right. We're all backwards today. You're pro Boston and you're pro subjectivity.
Exactly. These are the two things like I am inbred to be against.
Yep.
But I'm embracing them today. It's
Well,
I think on days that we get our asses handed to us, it's super important to reflect. and
Everyone's just
see
turned
where we're-
around
what
from
we can
yesterday.
improve on. I think that's a natural
look at
human
work
reaction.
and look for growth.
So
So-
I'm not dismissing subjectivity. I want to explain why I make manual adjustments and why it's not this.
Good.
Because
Go
the
ahead.
results can be weird, and the sample sizes that we're talking about are not that big, and teams will play against other teams where either best players are out or back-to-backs can align a certain way, or stuff happens during the game that is just going to make for weird results in the short run. The manual adjustments are mostly the teams that we're off market from on closing lines. Like, I'm making it to align us more with the market because I have a lot of respect for what the market says. And, like, for instance, if every game we were showing value against OKC, every game we were showing value on OKC with the same ratings, like take last night's Thunder versus Hawks game. If the actual point spread for that game had been 12, I wouldn't have shaded the line more towards the Thunder. I have enough respect for the market that I would have either done nothing or even given a manual adjustment for Atlanta. Like part of the model is the market. And I know, like, if you're enough of an originator of a model, you're not going to do that. And I think, like, with Cardi for baseball, first of all, is so much more mathematical that I think you can be more precise with a model. And then also, I think he just has no disrespect to 538, but, like, I think Cardi's ability to project baseball is better than 538's ability to project basketball.
I think that's
So
no doubt.
part of why we're doing a manual adjustment is because the model's not perfect, but also basketball is a sport where there are trends that can start to happen where a team, like, motivationally is either more invested or less invested, or there are players that are having a very quick level of improvement or decline that numbers just can't capture right away, where a player just starts playing way better than they've ever played, and the market can see it quicker than a model can see it. So the manual adjustments are really to account for that kind of thing, where we're just way off the market. I'm trying to basically move us a little closer to what the betting lines are, and I really don't care too much what the results of the games are when I'm doing that. So
Sure.
that's why, like, the Celtics are playing great, but we're already showing value on Boston in a lot of their games to begin with. So what
What
we're
would
really
it
going to
take
wind up
for-
happening, if we give the Celtics a manual adjustment every game, like improving them, we're just going to have more bets on them than we were already going to have a bunch. Now we're just going to have even more in for more money.
Okay.
And I
Something
like,
to keep,
yeah,
something to keep an eye on. I think it was at least worth the discussion. Let's shift though to the futures,
okay.
because we kind of glossed over that there for a second, where they were 538 has them. Let's talk about chances to win the East. What does 538 have their percentages?
49%, and the betting
All right,
line
so-
is plus 165.
All right, so right there, 538 has them at even money. I didn't check this morning. As of last night, you could get them at plus 200. That seems like a really good bet.
1 year ago
Um,
today, the Celtics were something like plus 3,500 to win their conference. I just want to remind us
Got it.
all of that.
All right, but we're saying at plus 200, there's
Mhm.
still value. I also want to touch on. You said how much better can they get?
Yeah.
I think there's two ways they actually can be even better than they are today.
Okay.
First is the simple one: Time Lord comes back.
Right.
Maybe
Although,
a-
no, I have to interject on that one. I actually don't know if he can make them much better. Time Lord
Well,
has a player rating of 1.7, which is worse than Derek White,
I understand.
about even with Malcolm Brogdon, worse than Al Horford, and not that much higher than Sam Hauser. It's less than a point above Sam Hauser.
I understand completely.
Okay.
Here's where I think his impact is most. It's not on a game by game basis in the regular season. In the playoffs, when things slow down and half court
Sure.
offense versus half court defense matters, having the anchor to that historically good last year defense actually playing minutes, that's where I think
Yeah.
they potentially are better. And then the other thing we talked off air this morning about the stat of, they have the NBA going into last night's game had 19 guys total this season that have shot 33s or more and are shooting 45% or better or more. And we listed off those guys. I actually had wrong. I included Pritchard in it. These are the 5 guys: Brogdon, Horford, Hauser, Grant Williams, Derek White. I'm sorry, I ended with Grant. Derek White is the 5th one. He's at 43.4. So he's just under that 45%. That must have been, he stepped a little bit down last night. Pritchard's at 37%. Tatum's only at 36, and Brown is at 35. I think there's upside for Jaylen Brown and Tatum on shooting threes. I don't think they're overachieving.
So
in their three.
Actually, now that I'm looking at this, the player ratings, and we can talk about this with the one game that we may care about today with the Lakers. The player ratings are going up on these guys.
Yeah.
Like, I'm looking at this. Brown went from a 1.7 to a 2.2 since yesterday. I guess there was some like global update they did. Derek White's rating is up to a 3.9, which like almost puts him in the all-NBA conversation. But like he's been so good. He's shooting that well from 3 and he plays great defense. Like he's an unbelievable player. So sure. I mean, Grant Williams is rated negatively. And if you just swap in Robert Williams for Grant Williams, you do actually get a pretty significant increase to the team.
Yeah. So, Mike, it looked like you were trying to say something, but I don't know if you're on mute.
I did mute myself. I apologize. I do have a bet I want to tout on this Celtics topic.
That is what we're here for.
The most regular season wins.
Oh, my God. You're not going to be happy about this, but I have this at plus 500 but from before the season. I think it's over already.
You're absolutely right. I'm not happy about that. I'm very
happy. For those of us not named
I'm always rooting.
What are the opportunities to do something? What's it looking like now, Mike?
Obviously, it's not a good price. But when I'm looking at this 538 page, and I also look at the fact that they're 20-5 already.
Matt, can you pull up on the screen the 538 page for projected wins and keep going, Mike?
Hold on, I just want to before I'm going to pause for 1 second because we're about to get news, but I don't know if we can do anything with it.
Okay.
Jared Allen's going to play tonight, but it looks like all our 4.5s have already moved to 5. So I don't think there's still not enough value, but we're gonna get that tweet. Jared Allen went through shoot around probably in the next 2 minutes.
Okay.
If anyone wants to see the magic of having the Twitter feed with the beat writers over here, no tweet from Underdog yet, but soon enough we're going to get Jared Allen at shoot around. Okay, continue.
So what do you think the current odds should be for most regular season wins?
Like somewhere between -2 and 3.
You said it's basically over.
-3.
I kind of agree.
I'm being a little hyperbolic with that. -300 though. I wouldn't put it higher than that though.
I do see a 250 line that I'm relatively interested in.
Yeah, like
an implied projection of 71%. I think it's a little better than 71% right now.
Yeah, because they're so deep that barring an injury to Tatum, they have no way to get that much worse. Oh, Derek White too. But even then, like the Celtics would have to lose 2 of their best players to not be the best team.
Yeah.
Or Tatum or 2 others, I think is how I would say it. If Tatum were off the Celtics, they wouldn't be the best team anymore. But if you removed one of like Horford, Brogdon, Smart, even Jaylen Brown, if one of those guys was like done for the year, for regular season purposes, the Celtics are still the best regular season team this year. So if you remove 2 of those guys, maybe not. But they're also so far ahead already.
Yeah, you have the added protection also. Like, what's the highest? Can you pull up the?
Yeah, you want to see this again?
I'm curious what's the highest team in the West? Is this
Memphis
Grizzlies and the Suns?
Yeah.
You don't have juggernauts in the West. It's really this is just Celtics versus Bucks bet for best record, most likely. Barring anything major changing.
What is the mark? Because you can bet number 1 seed in the East also, but oh my God,
I don't have that market currently.
You've got to lay
You
got to lay even bigger odds though.
Well, that's the point, right?
All right. Yeah. So, So it looks like all of a sudden, my initial Philly upbringing now is telling me enough Celtics talk. But before we move on, are we touting? Are we recommending the plus 200 on Celtics to win the East?
If you can get 200, I think it's fine. I I mean, I still am inclined to not fully trust the 538 playoff probabilities. I have a good amount of respect for their projected win totals, but
Mhm.
teams are going to look different in the playoffs. Like when Jakob Pertl is the Warriors starting center or whatever upgrade they make. I don't
Right.
know. I think the Warriors will probably make an upgrade. Other teams are going to upgrade. The Celtics will get Time Lord back, but that's already accounted for. Like their
No, that's
playoff.
fair.
So I don't think the Celtics are making a trade, right? Like that doesn't seem very
point.
likely.
Very good point. There's, I don't know what the percent odds are, but there's certainly a non-0% chance that Kevin Durant is not going to be on the Nets. So whatever team he's on, that the new team is going to have dramatically better chance to win. So if somehow KD gets traded to a team in the East,
Right.
that team will, Boston's chances don't look as strong as they do.
Yeah, let's say hypothetically Kevin Durant goes to Toronto.
Mhm.
Right? Now we've actually got like a legitimate threat. And here we go.
There's the update.
The tweets.
Right
Just
on cue.
how much time elapses between those is kind of astonishing to me. And I think Underdog is great at what they do, but they can't get everything right then.
No, of course they got to get it from somewhere, and they got to regurgitate it. And they got to post it.
Yep.
That's the business.
So if you
Right.
just turn on the push notifications for every
Big
beat
shout
writer
out
in the
to
NBA, you'll
Underdog.
be faster.
I've made some money off them.
All right, so
But
all right,
let's
so
say,
we're-
if Durant were on Toronto, like they're as good as Boston now. I think they'd be right there. So, and that trade is very unlikely specifically, but every team could get incrementally better while the Celtics are basically staying the same.
Got it. Okay.
So
All right,
I
I
think
think
plus 200 is fine, but I wouldn't go that heavy on it. And at 165, I'm not even betting it yet.
Got it. All right, so let's shift to today. It might be if the line's already moved on the Cavs game, it might not be value left, but is there anything worth taking a look at? Can we look at the
Other tab.
value tab and see what's popping?
Yeah,
If
so at -5, like we don't have enough here.
Got it.
But the Detroit-Miami game, I mean, I do want to talk about the Lakers for a second before we jump off,
Sure.
but just
Absolutely.
first quickly, the Detroit-Miami game, we do have a little bit of value on Miami, but there's no way we can bet this yet, given that Butler was questionable leading up to yesterday. They lost the game, which could add motivation for them to have the starters play again, but it was a close enough game the starters played their normal minutes, and it's a back-to-back coming home. It's a home game, but they're coming in from Memphis. So not the easiest back-to-back in the world, and they're playing Detroit, which is a team they can probably beat even if Butler doesn't play. The thing is, though, even though Butler is worth like 3.5, 4 points to the spread, he's not going to be worth as much in this context for two reasons. It's the tired version of him, which I think is the thing to highlight whenever you have the star player on the back-to-back, going back to that Luka Doncic game versus Houston, where Butler is less valuable because we're already dinging him for rest. Like, all the players are a little bit worse. So him being out will matter less for that reason. And also, then the manual adjustment that I have against Miami because of, like, potential backdoor cover, that'll go away, too, with a lower point spread. Like, that won't exist if the projected line is only 7. It exists because we would have had the projected line at, like, 12. So, basically, the point there is points around the margins between 10 and 15 are less important than between, like, 5 and 10. Like, that 5 to 10 range is the sweet spot where projected points are more valuable. So, Butler's impact won't be as big as what we were expecting yesterday.
Okay.
But
All right,
still,
So
if he doesn't
obviously,
play...
we get any sort of Memphis type update where it ends up being like Butler out, Bam out, other people questionable. Like clearly, like we can't rule that scenario out. In which case, all in on Detroit.
Yes, I think if you took Butler and Bam out, we would have a projected line of something like Miami -4.5 if those two guys weren't playing. And right now we have it at 10. So, yes, Butler and Bam normally would be worth more than 5.5, but given all those other variables I just added in, their impact in this context might only be 5 points or so. But that would still give us a really good Detroit bet. So it's one of those situations. It's not exactly like Milwaukee Charlotte from over the weekend because I think it's more likely than not Miami will play most of their guys. We could have one person rest, whereas on Saturday we were like pretty sure Giannis and Drew were going to be out. So this is way more speculative. Like they probably will play their regular guys for the most part. But if we do get the news, then Detroit is the side where there's potential. So even though we're showing a bit of value on Miami, I'm certainly saying don't, which is why I put the note in there for possible rest. We're not saying to bet Miami right now. It's basically keep an eye on it, and Detroit may be the bet if a lot of guys get rolled out. I think most likely, though, this is just a stay away game.
Okay.
It's a game with a lot of upside, but most likely scenario is we just don't have anything.
All right. So let's shift to the suddenly okay Lakers. Amazing what happens when you all of a sudden get a guy that people thought might be washed or injured for life is now a top 5 player. So what's happened with the Lakers is talked about the AD impact, and I assume we might be shifting to possibly even talking about Lakers play-in futures or some other potentials. What are we?
Yeah.
What's worth talking about for Lakers going forward?
Well, it's one of the best sources of validation for 538 ratings for this season, actually. Like, you might look at them, the way their season has gone, and say, oh, you know, the projections are way wrong. Like, the 538 thought the Lakers were terrible, and look, they're winning now. But if you bet what we had on Lakers games, like, I don't know what the Lakers are against the spread, but us with Lakers bets against the spread has been really, really good. Like fading them early and then buying back in when the hype got too strong in the other direction. Like we've won most of those things. The fact that the Lakers were, I want to say they were 5-point underdogs at home to Sacramento when LeBron was out, but Davis was playing. And they had a 2-point lead in that game late and ended up losing by 6. Like that was the start of it. They lost that game, but that was the first one where it was like, these odds are drunk now. Like the market has no idea what the Lakers are. Like this is, with Anthony Davis and without LeBron, a slightly below average team. Like the version of the Lakers that didn't have LeBron playing but had AD and had everyone else was a slightly below average team. That probably, if they played a whole season like that and AD didn't get hurt, would win somewhere in the 30s in games. Then they beat Brooklyn and they went on a bit of this winning streak again, and we had them for like a lot of those games. I think we won like four straight covers on the Lakers. And now with LeBron back, I don't want to say the Lakers are good, but we do have a team rating on them. Let me go back to, we have them at 1.3. They're above average, which is weird. Like it's weird to say that. They have a higher rating than Portland. They have a higher rating than Sacramento. They have a higher rating than Utah for now. That'll change when Conley comes back. Utah will pass them again with Conley because he's their highest rated player. But the Lakers don't suck, basically, is the point. The reason
here's my issue. The 538 projected shot of making the playoffs is 19%.
So that has a lot to do with their current record. And it also has a lot to do with the injury potential for Davis and LeBron. Like, these guys are still massively injury prone.
Sure.
Nothing has changed there. So, like, if Davis gets hurt, their season is over. Like, LeBron, they could survive. But if Davis gets hurt,
what based on past history would tell you that AD might get hurt?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm just making that up.
So is there anything that, like, with that in mind, like, I get it, and I was probably one of the first to say that I think the Laker hate has gone too far, I feel like. Is it fair to say there's something you're looking for? Maybe them to make the play-in tournament?
Not anymore.
Maybe them to make the playoffs?
It's not anymore. So a lot of these markets have moved a lot in the past couple of days. We didn't talk about it enough, but when Portland started losing and Utah started losing, one of the things we had said was it wouldn't be crazy if the Lakers finish ahead of Portland in the standings. And at that point, their play-in odds were like in the plus 250 to 300 range. I made a couple bets there for super small amounts, though. Part of it is I had bet the Lakers to make the play-in before the year, so I already have that. And it's before the year they were like plus 110, so that doesn't even look good right now. But we had talked about it a little. We talked about it more indirectly. But now I don't know if the hype has gone too far the other way, but it might have. Like, we basically had the Lakers insanely overrated, then insanely underrated, And now I think they might be a little overrated. Like we're getting it, it's like
Sure.
pinging back and forth, and they're closing in on like the proper valuation. The market is almost there. I think we've got the Lakers slightly overrated now. And you
Gotcha.
can see that in our
What's
projected line for tonight too.
Gotcha. What's LeBron's current player rating?
He's up to a 1.7, so he is past Alec Burks. I know. I'm very upset about this.
No, because what I was going to say is, so AD, and where's AD now? You said he's top 10, almost top 5 for player rating?
AD's rating has gone up by 1.5 since the beginning of the season. He's up from a 3.7 to a 5.1.
Gotcha.
The only players I can think of who have a higher rating than Davis are Luka, Giannis, Jokic, Embiid, Curry, and Tatum. I think that's all of them.
Okay.
Ja is like right there. There's a couple other guys that are around that, but he's like top 7 in the player ratings.
Gotcha. Because what my thought is, and this is not the hottest of takes, but with AD playing like a top 5, top 10 player,
Yeah.
LeBron cares more. Like LeBron, when LeBron is annoyed, the passive aggressive stuff, the subtweets, the like that game when they lost to Indiana. Guess who was supposed to be there to defend that 3?
Right.
That was LeBron that fell asleep on D because he's just not as clued in sometimes.
But that's the other thing too, like the point that I was making about, we're forgetting the Boston game where they lost to Miami or lost to Chicago. The Lakers are on this winning streak, and right squarely in the middle of that winning streak is a home loss to the Pacers.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure the
Pacers just beat the Warriors. Maybe the Pacers are good.
Yeah, without Halliburton and Miles Turner, I don't. But the Pacers were on a back-to-back coming into that Laker game and beat them. They had just lost to the Clippers on the road without George and Kawhi the previous day. They had the LA and LA back-to-back, so not a huge travel, no travel, but still a back-to-back. And they lost to a shorthanded Clippers team. And then the next night beat the Lakers with LeBron and Davis playing. And no one remembers that now because the Lakers then went into Milwaukee and beat the Bucks.
I'm trying to look at it also as from a macro level, not just the game. I do feel like LeBron. There's been a lot of LeBron hate, and justifiably so, for the way he's played this year.
Yeah.
However, he is still LeBron, and I think if AD is top 5, top 10 AD, LeBron is more clued in, and a clued in LeBron, his play rating is going to shoot up, and we won't be having any more Alec Burks or Sam Hauser might be better than LeBron. I mean, it's still LeBron, and when he's clued in, he's there. So that's why I am watching that team, because again, they go from the laughing stock to, we're not calling them good yet, but they have potential. And if there's a team that's going to make a move, whether it's the right move or wrong move, they're going to do something. If LeBron is clued in there or keyed in, he's going to force a trade. He is the GM there, in case anybody didn't realize that or remember that. So he and Ricardo will work a trade. Clutch is going to do what Clutch does, and the Lakers could be, they could end up with players. Now, the problem for LeBron, he's not a very good GM, so they're going to make a move. The question is, are they going to make the right move? But anyway, it's a fun team to watch because, like you said, they have been, the market's been wrong on them, and not just a little bit. They've been way off.
Yeah.
In opposite directions within weeks of
right. The Lakers were they were minus 300 or so, maybe a little less, to make the playoffs before the season. And then they were like minus 300 or 400 to miss the playoffs like a week and a half ago. Right. And both of those numbers were bad. The one before the year, I think, was worse because we didn't know if LeBron and Davis were going to stay healthy. Now they are healthy, so that's a bit of a different thing. But they're healthy for now. But there's so much downside for them still. So, point taken, like any game where Davis is playing well and LeBron is on the court, there's kind of like a synergy there just in terms of like the intangibles. I don't think they have a synergy like Draymond and Steph where their games mesh well together. I think they're whatever. They can play together. I'm not saying they're a bad fit, but I don't think they're like an especially good fit either. I think they're just two of the greatest players in NBA history, and they can play together because they know how to play basketball. But
yeah, I mean, remember, obviously they had a better balanced team then, but they did win a championship not too long ago.
Right, it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
Yeah, and I know it's one of my favorite things when LeBron haters say, "Oh, we're not counting that championship because we're in the bubble." But last time I checked, all the other teams were in the bubble that year too.
Right.
Yeah,
everybody had the same chance to win or not win.
But as far as the playoffs this year, like we still have Utah and Sacramento exceeding expectations to such a degree that the Lakers' poor start, like they're still 2 games under 500. And they also
I got one more thing I want to bring up.
All right, the other thing, and then go ahead, is the Lakers, up until that Milwaukee game, were facing one of the league's easiest schedules. Like they are not projected to do well the rest of the year, in large part because of the injury concerns, but also like they're going to be playing harder teams. So they've got now I'll let you go, and then I want to come back to this. We're on the front end of a back-to-back with Cleveland and Toronto, so I want to come back to that Toronto game before we get off air.
Yeah, actually, you know what? Let's stay on Lakers front end back-to-back topic. That's way more on topic than I was going.
Okay, so actionable thing, because we've given close to nothing on that front today, other than follow the Grizzlies PR account on Twitter and do the push notifications, because they do play tomorrow, and we'll see if their players come back.
And just for our progression today, we went from maybe we don't need to have a show to it'll be a real quick one to now 50 plus minutes with nothing actionable. But let's go. I'm sorry, I thought that was in my head. Did I say that out loud?
You might have said it out loud. Okay. No, but yeah, this just happens, I guess. We got excited, and we're trying to, I don't know. But tomorrow, I'm checking
we're on the road at Toronto.
And the Toronto back-to-back tends to be very common for resting because it's a difficult, you have to fly to Canada, and it's cold now. I've actually used that as an argument, like, you get off the plane and it's freezing there. These guys are from LA, not that they haven't done this before, but I think it just adds a little bit more probability to a rest game. So this is a big deal for the Lakers at Cleveland. I'm pretty sure that they have to be on national TV tonight because
LeBron at Cleveland's always a thing.
Yeah, and the other game that could have been chosen is the Detroit-Miami game. The game is on TNT, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So clearly a big deal. The Lakers are being hyped up. Like, this is a game they want to win. They're on a bit of a streak, and they're going to care quite a lot about this game. Now, if they get blown out tonight and the starters play lower minutes, that's a different story. I do think Cleveland should win, but I'm not predicting a 25-point Cleveland win. So we have the model at 5.8.
Let's say they post a Lakers-Raptors line later tonight.
Yeah, let's say they posted it now. Can we make it
overtime?
Well, that would be incredible if it goes to overtime. But I think we should make it more extreme. Let's say we had one now.
Yeah, I want you to help me create what it should be.
Okay. The fair line for this game, based on our numbers, what we're going to have the projected line at, if no one on the Lakers is out tomorrow, is going to be roughly Raptors minus 10.
Wow.
Because the Raptors' team rating is about 5.5 points better. The Raptors are close to a 7. They're like a 6.5, 7. And the Lakers are like a 1, 1.5. Plus, it's a pretty dramatic home court advantage. Toronto just played at home against Boston. They're not traveling at all. The Lakers are coming in from Cleveland to Toronto. So if no one is resting, we're going to have the projected line at 10, maybe 9, something like that. I think the real line is only going to be like 5 or 6.
How likely do you think it is that AD and LeBron play both games?
I don't know, but we have value anyway. So This is one of those, it's either a good bet or an amazing bet. And so because of that, as soon as I see a line, if it's lower than like 6, which I think it will be, I'm just going to get a bunch of money down today.
I would not be surprised if this opens Toronto minus 4 and we wake up and it's 8.
That would be pretty awesome. And then if like Davis doesn't play tomorrow, the line's going to be like 13.
Right.
Like the Lakers without Davis, yes, their role players look a little better, but they're horrible if Davis is not on the court.
No doubt about it.
And Wenyen Gabriel is out now, which I don't think matters. But Thomas Bryant, let me see who are we looking at now? I mean, Gabriel actually is rated only a minus 1.3. You don't care about him now, but you do actually care a bit about him if Davis is also out. Because the Lakers would be undersized, and also the guys that have to play, like we're going to be seeing Thomas Bryant and Damian Jones at center for the entire game. But Davis, the Lakers could win tonight, win a close game, and sit Davis and LeBron tomorrow.
I agree.
Or they could lose a close game and do that too, or sit one of them or whatever. And that's just for rest. Like, what if one of them, has some kind of actual injury? Because they're always falling over each other. LeBron sweats on the floor, and then someone tries to help him up and slips. 2 days in a row that happens somehow.
So
I have no idea.
Anything else we want to finish up with the Lakers here?
Well, I mean, I think the best betting recommendation I have for today is Toronto for tomorrow.
I think that's fair.
That's
All right,
that's where we're at.
Keep an eye on that. Mike, was there another topic?
Just one last quick thing, and the only reason I even got here was because we were talking about the Lakers, and I was just curious about the prices. But I want to be the first one on this show to state this for the record. I am seeing Thunder at very large odds to make the play-in tournament. I would be very curious about that one. I'm seeing 1,200. I'm not shopping around much. Matt, I understand
They're so bad.
I get it.
No, it's really the reason I'm dismissing it this quickly is because of what we just said of like the Lakers are playing better, the Jazz are overachieving, the Kings are overachieving, Kawhi and George are back.
None of that's true.
But it's all.
What if the OKC is the most overachieving of all these?
But they're still, despite overachieving, 11 and 13.
And just a reminder, I when we talk about teams that are going to make moves at the deadline,
yeah,
I can't see a world where OKC is looking to improve their team this year. If they see an opportunity, if Presti sees another way to get more, to increase his war chest of draft picks, if that's possible, or do something else, I think he would still lessen the team.
Yeah, they'll find a way to make up an injury for Lou Dort.
They're 5 games
later
out
in the
of
year.
first place. I'm just going to put that out
there.
there.
Gotcha.
They'll find a way to
Mike,
make up something for Lou Dort and possibly SGA later in the year.
I am also fine, Mike, if you want to take a clip of the last 45 seconds where you're saying you want to be the first on the show, and if they,
I'm not saying I want to bet it. I want to be able to take a victory lap.
It'll be on a continuous loop anytime
December the 6th.
Got it.
If they start to beat some teams that are like around that in their spot in the bottom of the Western Conference, like God forbid they win a game in Utah, like I think monitoring is fair. Yeah, I'm just not betting this now.
I'm not betting it. I'm very clearly not betting it. Okay. I want to be the first to flag plant. This is something that my behind is going to keep an eye on really closely because I'm just very open to being incredibly wrong on the Thunder. I just think that's like, why can that not be true?
Yeah, they've got some players who are really young who rate really poorly, and they have small samples, and they might be better than we think.
This is the team that's the easiest to be wrong on, in my opinion. There's just so many young players, and how accurate can we really make player ratings for this team? I'm just open-minded to the idea that we're very wrong, and that maybe they're a play-in team. I don't think that's crazy.
I'm excited for them to go into Memphis tomorrow and lose by like 48 again, or whatever it was, 78. How much did they lose by?
They did have it. That was the first of the Ja Morant "is it as good as we think" scenario, but it just turns out the backups were really good.
Yep. Yeah. Well, the other thing for actionability for tomorrow, that like I'm doing this from now on, turning on my push notifications for the Grizzlies PR update account, specifically because we don't know
of all the PR accounts you can find.
Yeah. That's one for sure. Let me see what else we got. But that one, we don't know yet if Morant's going to be healthy for tomorrow. So it's actually relevant for this upcoming game.
Yeah, you're actually right. And obviously, if some book posts a Grizzlies line, make sure you monitor that closely.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Anything else for today? All right. We've got a big slate tomorrow. Keep an eye on the Preaching Sense Twitter account. If there's anything that changed for tonight, or if there's any new news for heading into tomorrow, we'll try to keep things updated there. And we will be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. With big slate and hopefully lots of value to discuss. Thanks, everybody. See you.